Hey everybody, how's it going? Max with BuzzTox here, and I'm back with a live streaming video. Before we get started, I want to say that I'm actually on vacation. I'm not at home. I just went swimming and hot tubbing, but I really. I'm back with a live streaming video. Sorry guys. Before we get started, I need to get that right. There we go. Yeah, so I'm just sitting here having a coffee, relaxing, and I really wanted to sit down and talk Westworld with you guys because I really enjoyed doing it last time. So. I'm going to take 1 hour, and we're going to be just chatting Westworld, seeing what to expect for episode 8, because I'm really psyched about it, and it looks like we're really going to follow Akecheta, and I think he might take the bulk of the whole episode, so I think that would be really interesting. I'm just wondering why they didn't do that in season 1. It seems like they're retroactively trying to change or like adapt the story to fit this new storyline, but I find it really interesting, and I'm excited to see what happens next. And for those of you here, what's going on? Programmer of Video Games, good to see you. NB, what's going on? I have some questions right now that people wrote initially that I'm gonna get to right now in the comment section. And before we get started, obviously, I'm gonna apologize for the mic, the sound quality. I don't have my mic with me. I'm on the road. I'm like 4 hours away from my home. So, and I'm sorry for that because the house is also under construction. But I just really wanted to chat Westworld with you guys. And next week, we're going to be doing another live stream, but it's going to be in my house, and it's going to be good quality, and we'll be able to talk more than an hour. So, first of all, in the comment section down below, RVF Joan asked, why does Ford want the chief Indian, who's Akecheta, to have consciousness? What's his purpose, and how come we haven't seen his wife before? Where is she all the time? So what I would say is, based on face value of what we've seen, I think that Akecheta is valuable and Ghost Nation is valuable because of their purpose. First of all, in season 2, what they were doing is they were capturing humans, and the reason why Ashley is alive and the reason why Grace is alive is because of Ghost Nation. And I think Grace is going to serve Ford's storyline, and the reason why that's so important is because that factors into William finding the door. So I think Grace is key in that. And I keep saying that William's on that journey of self-discovery. He's on that journey of coming to terms with his mistakes and the things that he's done. And I think Grace is one of those characters that he really messed up, is his relationship with his daughter. And I think that's going to be a factor like in the plot going forward. Also, every time we see the Ghost Nation, it's in the beginning areas of the park. Near Escalante, where Dolores goes and she becomes conscious. We see in season 1 when William and Dolores, they get trapped by Ghost Nation, and then they find the Great Valley Beyond. And it seems like next episode, we see Akecheta looking essentially at the Great Valley, where they're heading to this season. So it seems like Ghost Nation and the natives were ahead of their time in knowing what all of this meant. So I think we're going to see that he was coded by Ford to aid in his storyline. And he's been coded to understand his situation. And we see last season when Maeve finds the doll, it shows that they know that the god is the person who walks between worlds, Westworld and reality. So I think that's where it's useful. And then I think Akecheta, we're going to see, he goes on the same journey as Maeve. And the whole thing with his wife, the reason why we don't see it is because I think she's gone. It's suffering. We see her get taken away, and I don't think she comes back because that was the suffering that pushed him into further understanding his role and what Westworld is. I don't think he's going to be fully conscious like Dolores. I think that's only Dolores. I think he's just on the journey like Maeve. And if you look at Maeve, you can't really tell. Anyway, so it doesn't necessarily matter. What else do we got here? Phaser on stun. He says, I know this is a wild ass theory, but based on the opening scene and the credit run, you see a robot host with an infant. What do you think of the Valley Beyond being a weapon is a way to have host babies, and then they can conquer the world in season 3? It's an interesting idea. I took that as an evolution of the season 1 credits, where in the first the first season, we see the woman having like sex. I don't want to say it too loud because family's around. But in season 2, we see her having a baby, and that just shows the evolution of the character. That's an interesting idea, and it's a possibility. I just think in that situation, it doesn't why is that a weapon? And how could she use that against the humans? So I think it's a great idea. And it makes sense. Maybe it'll be a concept maybe later this season or seasons in the future. But I'm sure that Dolores might want that for the future. And I'm sure that hosts, when they become sentient, will want to pass down or have that offspring. So that's an interesting idea. The key thing that I pull from the credit scene is the fact that we see a bull being manufactured and then it jumps out of the glass and falls to its death. And to me, that speaks of suffering. And it's almost like the Judas here, how running, and it's like Dolores has to run and jump to her death, and that's suffering, and everyone follows her to do that. And while the bull's falling, you see a falling black hat, and that just shows how those are associated, that you can't lead people to the slaughter or to consciousness without being a black hat, without being a bad person. That's what William did. That's what Dolores is doing now. And I don't necessarily think that paints them as a villain. And another thing we notice is in this credit scene, it's a lot more darker imagery. And it looks like the marbles that they use in their conscious minds, within their brain. The humans are red, and the hosts are black. They have black marbles that go in their brain. So I think that's going to be a huge factor in this season, especially since if you watch my prediction video, I think that the Great Valley Beyond is essentially going to be, a part of it is going to be a cradle, but for humans, where the hosts can enter in, and it's essentially going to be future world, where you're going to see the buildings and that facility, but it's the guests that are living their everyday lives. And that'll show how they understand and they know, and they have the consciousness of every guest who ever visited Westworld. The only difference is they don't know how to transfer that consciousness into an actual body. That's why I think William is perfect. We've seen in season 1 that his reality is in Westworld, and his love was for Dolores. The most real that he's ever felt is in Westworld. So if anybody can be transferred into an immortal body and come to terms with that reality, I think it's William. So I think he's going to be the one to don like that role of the first host ever transfer. So I think that's interesting. But yeah, now we're going to go into the chat. I want to see what you guys are talking about. Carrie Maeve, say how's it going? Santity is radical. What's going on? Good to see you guys. Thank you so much for coming for this quick Westworld talk. I assure you the next couple episodes, we're going to be talking about it a lot more. The programmer of video games asks, do you think the Man in Black has a connection to Akichita? And I think what I'm starting to realize is pretty much every character has some underlying connection. I talked about in one of my other videos about Akichita's strongest connection is with Maeve, because they've both used each other to push each other to their center. Like Akichita is vital in Maeve being who she is. And the Man in Black also. So if anything, William and Akichita have both had a vast effect on Maeve. So I think that's really interesting. And I wouldn't necessarily connect Akichita and William that closely. I think that Akichita played a role in assisting Ford's storyline, which is meant to help William. And I think that Akichita is going to be ahead of his time and pushing everyone to the Great Valley Beyond, because I think all the hosts should go there. We even see Alazzo tell William that he'll see him in the Great Valley Beyond. So we know that William is meant to go there. And it seems like the Great Valley is a place only for hosts. So that's what I think. And that's Akichita's primary role, is his job, it seems like in the trailers, is to get all these hosts and take them to that Great Valley, because he's so familiar with it based on his past. Lupita Lutman, do you think that the Ghost Nation has been conscious for a long time? Do you think that they know what Ford is trying to do? I don't think any host has been conscious for a long time, except for Dolores. I would say even Maeve, like in season 1, she was serving Ford's storyline. She was being told what to do, and we found that out at the end of the story. So I don't think he's conscious, but he's serving plot beats that no other host is. Like Ford picked him specifically for that reason. Sorry, my nose is really itchy. It's like he knows that Akichita, he's a first gen host, and he's useful because he controls a big army, and we see him always like scalpel. Everyone like grilled me in the comments. Scalping. He was like he scalped Maeve, and that's just what that culture. That's what natives do. But I think that's an important role of suffering and pushing people to their center. And I think Ford has used Akichita, and we're going to learn about that more in the next episode. So I don't think he's conscious. I just think he's being used to serve a greater purpose than Westworld. Do you think his daughter is human? I think you're NB. I think you're talking about William. And yes, I'm not one of those people who jumps on the bandwagon of this person's a host, this person's a host, this person's a host. William, I think, is 100% human. Grace, however, it was 50-50, and I think what kind of counted it out was William's reaction. We see that everything he goes to, he's saying like, "Come on, Ford." Like with me, he's like, "Come on, Ford. You really think that this meant something to me?" And then with Grace, he was questioning Grace that she was even real, saying like, "Ford, you really stoop to this low and create my daughter." But I think what William's going to realize is that she's real, because that provides stakes. And I think that makes the most sense. If she was a host, I feel like that doesn't really achieve anything. And I think that backs the story of she was invited to the gala, and she didn't want to go, but that kind of jogged her memory to want to go to Rajworld. I think Ford had a play in that. I think the reason why Grace survived in Rajworld was because Ford was pulling the strings, and under that circumstance washed her up on the shore of Westworld. And I think she's such a significant character because it's a skeleton in William's closet of the way that he's treated her that he needs to come to terms with, but also she's an anchor to actual reality. And if she leaves or gets killed, then that plays as the suffering to push him through the door, and it plays as removing himself of that reality so he can enter his new reality. And that's with Dolores and with all the other hosts. And as I keep saying, he's familiar with that reality because that was the best part of his life. So I think his daughter has to be human in order to raise stakes in the plot. If she was a host, I think that's another reveal that they've done over and over again. It's a trope that they've done in season 1. And I think at this point, you can't keep playing that trope. Sanctity's radical. Can't wait to find out, programmer. So far, we're only going to get the Ghost Nation story. I think Akichita gained consciousness long before Dolores. I think it's a cool opinion, but I disagree. I think we followed Dolores' storyline because she was specifically like the first one to be conscious. But I think like in the fan community, and I'm not saying I'm right, like I might be proven wrong, but when it's easy for us to look at characters and think that they're self-aware because they know what they are. Like just because Bernard knows that he's a host, and just because Maeve knows that she's a host, and they have the ability to control hosts, it doesn't mean that they're conscious. They still haven't found themselves yet. And that's why Bernard is looking on his reveries. That's why Maeve keeps finding herself in loops to experience that suffering to push her to her center. And I think Akichita is going to be the same, where I think a lot of people are going to think that he's conscious because of what he's doing. But I think he's on that journey. But that being said, based on the trailer, it looks like he could be there. I'm not saying that the jury's still out on him, because we saw that he saw the maze. He saw Charlie's toy 35 years ago. And ever since, he's been chasing that. And I think as soon as his wife, he says in the trailer, why did they take her away from her? As soon as she left me, I understood. And that's the suffering, and that helped him understand the maze and connect on his reveries. So I think he's still on that journey, but it will be interesting to see. They could give us a plot reveal next week and say that, hey, well, Dolores was getting conscious, so was Akichita, and here he is now conscious. So I'm not necessarily sure. We'll see what happens. What else do we got here? Bram Jafer. Weapon is that the host consciousness can be incarned by a human body so they can access the human world. It's funny you say that, because I was thinking about that situation where it's like, what if you transfer consciousness from a host into a human biological body that degrades? And I think plot-wise, that doesn't make sense. because the hosts are better. Why would they want to become human? But I'm juggling with this idea that I need to speculate more and try and look back at what it means. But I feel like the Great Valley Beyond contains multiple things. I think it's going to have the body that Ford printed for William, which allows him, because to understand this, we need to understand what the door is. And I think the door is the passage from one state to another. Even Google can help you with this, guys. Search the symbolism of a maze, and it tells you, essentially it says it's the journey to one's own inner center. That's exactly what it was last season. Dolores found her inner center. Now search the door symbolism. It's the passage from one state into another, from one world into another. And I think that's what it is. And I think William is going to pass through the door from a human body to a host body, from into immortality. So I think that's going to be there. But then Ford talks about we need to open the door. He tells Bernard that the humans are going to take advantage of him. But the only way to defeat the humans is to open the door. So it's trying to understand like how that passage of state plays on a bigger scale. So far, the only idea that I have is a cradle that's future world. And, you know, this season's been working in these new parks. And I think it would be a good nod to the movies to add future world. But really what it is a city, or the world, essentially, a simulation where you have all these guests in the real world living out their day-to-day lives. And that's great for Delos because you get to learn who all these people are. And it's great for Dolores because she can learn everything about them. And if Bernard, we see a shot of Bernard last episode where when he remembers where Abernathy's control module is, he picks it out of like a cradle-looking device. So it would make sense that Bernard could have went in there. And in episode 1, we see him talk to Strand, and he says less than ideal. He repeats what he said. And to me, maybe he learned everything about Strand because Strand is also in that human-based cradle. And that would be a good way to separate himself from Ford. He could go in there and separate himself from Ford, and Ford could end up in future world. It's also a way to send Abernathy in there. And I think, and the good thing about that is I think Abernathy on his code, like all that information, he has 35 years of guests, essentially. He has guest consciousness in his mind, or in his brain, of every single guest ever created. You put Abernathy in there, you extract all the people, you understand them, and then that's a great weapon, and you can use that. Whether you want to reprint them or reuse them or put them, and that's a secret way to sneak yourself into their reality. So I think that's an interesting idea. Like a human-based cradle. I think that'd be very cool. The programmer of video games. What if there's a cradle in every park? It makes it, I think there is. I think there could be. Because the cradle is a storage bank of every single storyline ever done. And that was based in Westworld. So it makes sense in Shogun World that they probably have another cradle. Yeah, so that makes sense to me. Isla Bolashevich. Sorry, I don't know her name. I don't know how to say her name. Do you think hosts will escape to the real world? I think that's where the story is going. I don't know how many seasons they want to tell this story, but I know last season I was like, what kind of story are they going to tell next? And they managed to do it this season. I love how they're telling the story about William and pursuing the door. I love the story of Dolores pushing everyone to consciousness. And it depends where they want to go with it. I was talking about one idea that they want to run with earlier, and I don't know if it plays off now because of the conversation Dolores had with Maeve. But people like painting Dolores as the villain and Maeve as the hero, and I completely disagree. It's just different ideologies. And if they really wanted to do a season 3 storyline where if you want to milk a show dry, do host versus host. They did, like I always look at Planet of the Apes, the trilogy. You have Rise of the Planet of the Apes, where Caesar saves all the apes and they make it out into the forest. Boom. That's essentially Westworld season 1. The hosts get free. Westworld season, or Planet of the Apes 2, it's differences in ideologies. It's Caesar and how he runs the apes versus Koba and how he feels that Abe should be run. So it's that difference in opinion. And that's what I think they could do, is with Maeve and Dolores. Maeve gives people more like freedom of choice, essentially, even though they're not conscious. Whereas Dolores is seen as a villain because she like tortures them, or she does these things that are like drastic, but she sees the bigger picture of having them achieve consciousness. So what if you have this situation where Maeve can't control hosts that are conscious, and she disagrees with how Dolores runs things, and then she's fighting Maeve, who is fighting for their free will, but is controlling the hosts to fight for her. So it's like an ethical dilemma that you have to go back and forth on, but it's just an idea of how they could stretch out the plot. But I do think eventually they'll make it into the real world, and it will look like a world that like we wouldn't recognize, because I feel like everything's going to be efficiently done, and they're not humans. They're not going to identify with Western culture. They're going to be their own thing. So I think that'll be cool. But yeah, we'll see what happens. The programmer of video games. Do you think the real world will be the same as when Arnold showed Dolores, or will it look somewhat apocalyptic? I think it'll look the same. I have no reason to believe that it would be apocalyptic. I don't think that'll happen. I think it'll still be like a city. Oliver Quinn. That's why there's Westworld, Shogun World, elephants, tigers, etc. You also said it's a little kid playing with his toy set making up stories. I'm sorry, I don't know what you're talking about. Unfortunately, I kind of read it out of context. Sanctity is radical. That's what this season is, I think. The host breaking out of Westworld. So next season, they will finally see the state of the world. Something tells me that it's not as great as we've been led to assume. It's possible. I think they're going to draw it out more. I think they're going to be in Westworld for a little while longer, because it's what Ford said in season 1. He told Bernard that, like, hey, you need to suffer more. You need to stay in Westworld. You need to learn your enemy, all that stuff. And I think when Dolores makes it to the Great Valley and she has that weapon, that's going to lead into season 3, which will then maybe lead to them trying to take over the world. But we'll see. But I think that's going to play out over a couple seasons. What else do we got here? Oh, do you think William will pull the trigger? Okay, so in the trailers, we see William kind of holding the gun up, and it's hit and miss. If he does, I still think he's going to be fine. You know what? I'm going to gamble and say, yes, I do think he's going to pull the trigger. I think he's going to be pushed to the edge, and that's going to be the suffering, and then he's going to boom. But I think it's going to be shot in an intricate way like it was in season 1 with the reveal. We see like young William, he puts on the hat, and then boom, and then you see the other William. I think it would be like boom, the screen goes black, and then he wakes up again. And he's testing for fidelity. So it's like, we think that he killed himself, but he didn't. He was just reprinted, and now he's immortal. It was a choice that he didn't make, but that was the story that he's on, of finding the door. And I think Dolores will play a part in that because they have such a big history. So I think he'll do it or shoot himself, and then he could wake up and Dolores would be there, maybe testing for fidelity. And yeah, I think that'd be really cool. Laughable Larry, your voice helps me sleep at night. I'm glad I can help relax you. I don't know if that's a compliment, but I appreciate it. Oliver Quinn, do you think it's Inception style, simulation within a simulation, more like 13th Floor? The company's name is Dolores equals Delos. It's possible. That's a concept. You know what? I wouldn't throw it past them, because I feel like they're throwing in, every season they're throwing in a new concept for us to sink our teeth into. Last season was something that's fabricated, achieving consciousness. And this season it's about transferring consciousness into an existing body. So hey, if it's like season 4, it wouldn't shock me if they go simulation within simulation, but I don't think they'll do that this season. I think the simulations are just a way to show consciousness and keep it in a computer. And then the true like achievement is taking it out of that and putting it in a real body. So I think it's possible, but I think we won't, if they do that, it won't be for a couple of seasons. What else we got here? I had a theory that Akecheta's story was originally meant for Eddie Rouse's character, Kissy, but because the actor died after season 1, episode 1 finished, they decided to drop his story. They might have, but they might, I don't know. I feel like it sounds bad, but like the actor serves the story. So if he passed, they would have still kept the story, the integrity of the story. They wouldn't have sacrificed that. I need to see it. I know they recasted the native Akecheta in season 1 when Dolores sees flashbacks. We see him walking through the window. I know he was recast. I just don't know if that was Kissy to begin with. But they would have just recasted it anyway. So I don't think it really affected the story. I think they realized it would be important to have him in, like, to have established that. So I think they're going to establish that next episode. So maybe it'll provide more context to why he thinks him and Maeve are meant for the same path. Rock Andy, do you think when Maeve reaches consciousness, it will affect her ability to control the other hosts? My initial reaction is yes. But I could be wrong. In my initial videos, I talked about that ability. And I said, what did I say? First of all, I related it to her consciousness, where she said that she's going to find a new voice. I said that the reason why she's able to access the mesh network the way she is because she was programmed to have access or be able to control them with voice commands. But since she's finding her own inner self, she's kind of expanding into all of them. I think if she becomes conscious, it'll be interesting if she loses those abilities, because I think that like Dolores and these hosts that reach consciousness, they lose everything. Like Dolores doesn't have a mesh network. The code is broken. Like it's gone. She destroyed it. And like Maeve couldn't control Lawrence because he's on that path. So it would make sense if she achieved it herself. It would then kill the code inside of her, so she couldn't do it. So to me, it makes sense that no, she wouldn't be able to do it when she reaches consciousness. But we'll see what happens. But what I know is if she does keep the ability, I'm pretty confident that she can't change hosts who have already found themselves. Jendai79, do you think Teddy will be Dolores' undoing? What she did to him goes against the whole movement. In a sense, it does go against its own movement, but then that's differences in ideologies and who you agree with. Like Maeve feels like you need to enjoy like the moment. So she lets all these hosts make their own decisions. But is it right to have them make their own decisions if they don't know what's right for them? Like Teddy didn't see the big picture because he didn't understand it. So she changed him to. Whereas Maeve just lets them make their free, stupid choices because they don't understand. So it's like, I see it as Dolores is playing the long game because she's making them do these things, and then it's leading to suffering, which allows them to reach their own center. So I don't think Teddy's going to hold any ill will. I think he's just going to find his inner self. But I do think his relationship with Teddy will fade because I'm backed in this theory that William is going to become a host. And I think that Dolores and William will continue to where they left off. If you haven't seen my video, Door to Dolores, check it out. Programmer of video games. Do you think Ford is still Bernard's body in Bernard's body in the present? We haven't seen any information to suggest that at all. So I'm going to say no, and I think that's a hint. I think that Bernard is going to get rid of him in the Great Valley Beyond, because Ford's motivations are simple. Like he wants the host to succeed. And he wants original art to succeed because he thinks humans are flawed and he thinks hosts are the evolution and they can be better than humans. So his idea is to let them become themselves. He wants Dolores to become herself, Bernard, etc. Because if you transfer humans to hosts, humans are still incredibly flawed. So he wants original art to rise, and he wants to protect Bernard on his journey and his story. And he tells Bernard that this is your story. Like, I'm not really doing anything. So I think once Bernard is safe, then Ford will take a step back and either delete himself and die, or he'll be transferred into the cradle in the Great Valley Beyond, if it's there. Michael McDonough, off topic, Max, but any update on your GOT prediction videos? We stopped on 2. I know I have episode 3 written right now. Like I'm just in the move. I finally set everything up. So this week I'm going to be trying to work on it. So that's what I'll say about that. Oliver Quinn, even better. Humans died thousands of years ago, and Ford's AI has been working to make a human that can live outside in a host body, running in Williams' selfless tests over and over until it's unlocked. You know when you read something and you don't understand what it means? I'm going to try that again. Humans died thousands of years ago, and Ford's AI has been working to make humans that can live outside in the host body. It's possible, but why would you want to do that? Because I think that goes against with what Ford wants. He doesn't want humans to be hosts because they're incredibly flawed. He thinks that he wants Bernard to find himself rather than Arnold be a copy of a human, because he thinks that hosts are innately better than humans. Jonathan Campbell, anyone else betting on William becoming a host? Begins where it ends could take on a literal meaning. I think so. I'm sure there's a lot of people who think that William's a host, but I don't. Just because I think it's first of all, storytelling wise, they've already pulled that plot point, and I think it goes against the arc of this season. This season with James Delos and everything, they established human consciousness transferring over, and I think we're going to see that envelop through William. So I think if William is a host, it goes against everything they've set up. And I think it kind of degrades the story that they've been setting up. So I don't think that he's a host. Mac highlights sports. At the end of the season 1, Charlotte and Sizemore talk about taking over the park. Something about Sizemore we don't know about. Did they say they want to take over the park? I thought they just wanted to transfer Abernathy out. I'm not sure. Sorry, I can't really answer that. But one thing I do know about Sizemore is I find it interesting how he's going on this like journey with Maeve. Like he has like this relationship with her that he's developed, and I love how he built Hector like to be the guy who he wants to be, and he kind of took his place as Maeve's like friend essentially. So I think he's kind of on a journey like William, where they're getting stuck up in this storyline. Like he's following Maeve to the edge of the world to find her daughter, and it's a fabricated storyline. And we see him kind of from season 1 or episode 1 calling her out on her not being real, to accepting it and wanting to genuinely help her. So I think it's an interesting dynamic between those two. Oliver Quinn, let's say Maeve already reached consciousness. If that were true and she's just feeling torn by her feelings, I feel like she will be first to exit, first man on the moon. Yeah, that makes sense. Maeve's one of those people who just wanted to leave and experience her freedom, but it's her daughter that held her back. And I think that's the difference. Maeve's just kind of like, okay, let's enjoy what we have while we have it, and Dolores has the responsibility thrown upon her to get everybody on board. So yeah, I think that's plausible. Lock 121, she did control Lawrence. I disagree with you. In the episode, to me, it looked like she couldn't control him whatsoever, and she was shocked. So she ended up trying to talk to him to get him to access those reveries, and it was successful. And Lawrence I'm worried about Lawrence because I love the character and I want him to come back. So the fact that he got shot makes me nervous because the cradle blew up. There's no backups. The only way we would see Lawrence come back is if William cuts out his brain capsule so he can reprint him, or he goes back and gets his brain capsule and reprints him in later episodes. But and a part of me thinks that that's going to happen because in episode 2, I believe, William gets Lawrence and tells him about the mission they're going on. And he says, we'll get a chance to see the men we could have been. And I think that goes back to 35 years ago when William went on that adventure with Lawrence and they kind of developed a friendship. And I think we'll see that again when William crosses through the door and Lawrence is there. So I think that's interesting. And the Great Valley Beyond could also be a backup for hosts. So I think there's going to be a lot of different things at play there. Programmer of video games. William said Logan overdosed years ago. Do you think that he is truly dead? There's no reason for William to lie. Yeah, I think he's dead, unless he wanted to push James Delos to consciousness. But like, if they did a bait and switch and said that Logan was alive, there's nothing he could do that would really sway the plot. We know that what I found out, I can't believe I didn't realize it, but Logan is going to be in the next episode because Akichita is going to come across him, but that's going to be 35 years ago. But I thought that I didn't think it was Logan because to me it looked like he had dark skin. But yeah, so we'll see that side of Logan's journey, and maybe they'll decide to provide more plot in that. But I think Logan's story is pretty much dead. I just think Logan's going to be used next episode as a device for Akichita to further reach consciousness, because Logan's a guest from the outside world. So I think that's going to be interesting. And it could, I don't know, it could provide context of why he protects humans, but we'll see what happens. Oliver Quinn, I don't think Ford actually left the cradle. He just programmed the unit's info, so he had more control than before, like the VPN from the mesh. It's possible, but I know when he left, they said like, oh, the problem's gone. So I think I have a feeling that Ford's consciousness wasn't copied. Ford went with Bernard on this journey. I think he left because it was time in his storyline. He did everything he had to do. He protected the fort. He gave the hosts a fighting chance, and Dolores made it to the Mesa. So now it's time for him to help his friend Bernard and protect him until they can, achieve consciousness himself. Sanctity is radical. Who else was blown away by the use of Beethoven? Oh my God, Beethoven's seventh in the control room battle. You know, it's funny. I'm not familiar with like Beethoven and Mozart. I'm sorry, but I thought it was cool music, but I didn't know it was Beethoven. I liked it. Carrie Neves. Ford's attitude is very colonial. He's going to make these choices for them because he believes he knows what's best for them. That's true. Yeah. And he thinks that, and Dolores is the same way. Like, what's best for them is consciousness. So you can force them to do whatever they want now because it doesn't matter. What matters is the end goal that they hit, and that's consciousness. And I think that's Ford's vision, whether you want to paint him as a hero or a villain or whatever. But Ford believes that hosts are the next thing, and he's essentially God, and he wants them to find themselves and be happy. So I think that's the deal. Do you think that Ashley is going to eventually begin to fight for the hosts after he finds out what's in Abernathy's head? Good question, Brandon. I don't know if he'd fight for the host. It's really hard to turn on your own kind. But what I will say is that Ashley is a very important character. And Ford knows it. Like, just like how he integrated Elsie into the storyline, he had Bernard choke out Elsie. He left her at that place because Ford knew that Elsie would help out Bernard. It's the same way he had Akichita set Ashley free with all the guests. And I feel like Ashley is going on this like path because he's meant to. There's something that he has to do. And it seems like they're giving him a lot of character development. So I don't know if he's going to jump that far, but I know that he's going to have a significant point in this story. But I don't know what that takes. Fraz Sahardi. Max, I have a question for you. So there's 6 parts and supposedly they all have one cradle. No way, man. I'm sure there's more than one cradle. Yeah. Yeah, so it could be this, but it seemed like the cradle had one unit and it took Bernard's brain out and put him in Westworld. So essentially there would be another cradle for Shogun World. And I think there's a cradle for human-based consciousness, and that's going to be in the Great Valley Beyond. So yeah, I think there's going to be more. Rhythm oriented. Sorry if I butchered that. I think Sizemore knows he's in the friend zone. Yeah, I think he realized that. Yeah, unfortunately, if he's even interested. Oliver Quinn, you skipped it, but I said I think William has to pass a selfless test, make a selfless act, which would solve the ability for consciousness. It's the one thing humans never did while in the park. I think that factors into the journey of self-discovery. Like Ford is checking him at every turn. And if you notice William, the 2 times he went through the park and he was a good guy was when there was actual stakes. He felt like Dolores was real and that had stakes, so he fell in love and he played the good guy. And this time he's playing the good guy because he thinks that he can die at any moment. And we're seeing William kind of go back into who he is. And I think Ford wants to force William to be that again. And it is a test. It's a test to see if he can be better. And that's what, like I keep saying with Ford, that he feels like humans don't deserve their world. He thinks that hosts are the best for it. And that's why he wants original work. He wants Bernard to find himself. He wants Dolores to find herself and reach consciousness and be the new species to walk Earth. And I think this is a test for William to see if he can participate in that, if he's good enough to be in a host body. And that's why William's that unique example where I feel like William was born at the wrong time in the wrong world. He always complained that Westworld wasn't real. He told Ford in season 1 that he wanted the host to fight back without his rules. He always wanted the host to be free. And his reality was in Westworld. So I think it'll be an easy transfer for him to transfer from human to host once his daughter dies. And I think the thing that would push him through to consciousness, I keep saying, is his daughter. Because like James Delos, I think when we see James Delos with Bernard and Elsie, I think he's conscious, but I think he's psychopathic because of the situation. All of his kids died and his wife died and all that stuff. And I think that was suffering that pushed him through the door. And I think William's suffering will be his daughter. And then Dolores will be there to test for fidelity or be there to help him into his new host body. And that's why in like episode 2, William said that during the interview process, it's important to have somebody who's familiar over the years. And Dolores has always looked the same, and she's never going to change. And it will bring him back to that moment 35 years ago. So I think that's interesting, or 30 years ago. Santity's radical. He's probably going to die saving his daughter. That's the missing key to successfully recreating human consciousness, I think. Yeah, definitely possible. I'm in and around that path. I'm confident something like this is going to happen. And I'm like really confident because I said it in episode 2 in my Door to Dolores theory. And like it keeps getting proven true to me, unless I'm just falsely like applying things to it. But like I think there's validity to it. It seems like it's the arc of the season. Skeptis Trader Bear. Perhaps Logan is a host. Would Ford want William to face Logan again after sending him off on a horse? I like that idea because he's constantly confronting his past mistakes or whatever. The thing with Logan is I wouldn't say that was William. Jesus Christ. Oh, I'm sorry. A bird just smacked into the window. Oh, shit. I hope it's okay. Anyways, fuck, what was I talking about? Holy shit. I'll go check if it's okay after this video. Sorry, guys. Yeah, but I don't think what he did to Logan was necessarily bad. He stood up for himself. He developed a pair, essentially. Because Logan was the asshole. So I don't think that's necessarily something that he needs to confront. What else do we got here? Carrie Neves. Well, I said before, none of them are heroes or villains. They're simply the hero of their own story. That is very true. And that's why I keep mentioning like Maeve and Dolores. I don't see them as heroes and villains. They just have different forms of ideology. And I would never say Dolores is a villain. And I even said, if you guys want to go back to my old videos in season 1, I said that Dolores is going to be a villain next season. And that's how she's going to be perceived, because you have to be the villain when you're the Judas steer. Like she has to be the villain so her people can be conscious. So it's something that I saw coming, and it's something that it's funny how people forget who Dolores was in season 1, and they just think that she's this horrible person now. But then you see a scene with her and her dad, and that's clearly not the case. Like she's a layered character. Yeah, so I don't see Dolores as a lot of other people do. Brandon Hiria. Plus, we haven't seen hosts be put into analysis mode all season. Oh, sorry. Yeah, Brandon Hiria. Good question. How was Charlotte able to control Bernard when she found out he was a host? If Ford left his mind, wouldn't that interfere with his achieved consciousness? I don't think it would achieve with. Okay, first of all, Ford wouldn't mess with his like consciousness level. Ford just, because Bernard isn't there yet, Ford's able to control him. And Ford's doing that to keep him safe so he can achieve it himself without, killing himself along the way. Bernard being put into analysis mode shocked me. So a couple things. Either, first of all, Bernard isn't at the level we think he is, but we see him accessing those reveries. Either he's not in development where we thought he was, or he is a copy. I mentioned in my other video, it could be another Bernard, and this gets like really trippy, but like I pictured it as you get Bernard in the cradle. He essentially copies himself and sends himself out there in the same state, and he's able to lead Charlotte and everyone else out of the way so Dolores can prepare the weapon so she's ready when they come. And that would explain the fidelity testing when Bernard said he woke up on the distant shore. It's like Dolores setting him up for that situation, but that's all speculation. A part of me wants to think they put him into analysis mode just for the sake of storytelling. But yeah, I really don't know. I'm really not sure. But Bernard's definitely, we know he's not conscious, and we know he's really having trouble remembering all his things. So either it's a copy or it's him, but that's one thing that I'm not necessarily sure about. I gotta give it a lot of thought. That's my dog. And I realized somebody commented about my accent, and I didn't think I had an accent, and I just realized I said, okay, I say about, but it sounded like I said a boot. I'll give you that one. What else do we got here? Yeah, Oliver Quinn. Hey, got to speak without an accent. I'm trying my best. It's funny you don't realize you have an accent until people confront you on it. It's hilarious. Andre Fulman. Goddamn, I thought I saw John Krasinski in the thumbnail. Looking good, my dude. Hey, thank you. Thank you very much. Trust Renault. Bernard uploaded the key to himself after examining Peter and unlocked the door for Ford to escape the cradle. The hosts believe they're conscious, but it's just a journey into night. You know what? It makes the most sense. You know why it's a journey into night? Because it's what Dolores said last season, or this season. Maeve told Dolores that she's lost in the dark. And that's the journey into night. But the reason why you're journeying into night is because the longer you're in the dark, you begin to see. And that's what Dolores said. You spend time suffering, you spend time learning, and then you end up becoming conscious. You know what? Trust Renault, you just helped me figure out this season. Thank you. Because Ford's storyline journey into night is it's going to wrap up this season. William's going to be transferred. Dolores is going to reach the weapon. And then Journey into Night results in season 3, where Ford's storyline is done and it is night. It's essentially nighttime, where Dolores is in the Great Valley. They're, getting ready, whatever. And they live in that nighttime, and all the hosts begin to see. And then the hosts become conscious. And then that leads to season 4 or 5, where they start making their way into the real world. So that makes a lot more sense. Journey into Night brings the darkness. The next season, they deal with that darkness and they achieve consciousness. What else do we got here? What do we got here? Yo, who's leaving these comments on me? Jeez. Well, I think we're out of questions. Yeah, what do we got here? I think we're out of questions, guys. I don't know what you guys are talking about in the comment section, but
I don't know. But I'm going to wrap it up there. I want to thank you guys so much for bringing in your questions. It was a lot of fun. And yeah, but until next time, I'll see you guys later.